everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Audery Lane. I am the co-director of the Days of the Dead International Film Festival. And today we are doing the art of world and character building. This panel is to discuss how these ideas come to life and how do you create memorable characters and worlds that people are going to care about and remember. Okay, got it, nailed it. So we have a illustrious panel. So if we can start on my left-hand side, if you can introduce yourself and give a little synopsis about your project, please.
Yes, ma'am, Audrey. Thanks so much for having us here at Days of the Dead. My name is Justin Best. I'm the writer-director of the film Sheryl, which played last night at 10 o'clock. You missed it, you missed out.
Thank you. My name's Mikey. I'm the screenwriter for All I Want for Christmas Is You.
Yeah!
We had a good screening yesterday, so that was lots of fun to hear. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Bob Singleton, filmmaker, writer, fake chef. I'm here with 4 screenplays, a pre-apocalyptic bio outbreak called Atrophy, and then 3 horror westerns in my Anathema series.
I've been pronouncing it wrong this whole time, so that's great. You'll have to do it one more time. Just keep dropping the names. Anathema.
I'm Michael West. I am the writer of about half a dozen books, some of which have made the bestseller list on Amazon. Cinema of Shadows is probably the most recognizable one, and Spook House, all set in Indiana.
Yeah. Nice.
Hi, I'm Josh.
Hi, Josh.
And I'm Toth. I'm the screenwriter of Glorious, the Lovecraftian glory hole motion picture, Shudder, and the writer of Mouth, the novella about a hole in the ground. Yeah.
You like holes?
Yes.
Don't we all?
You're supposed to follow that shit?
Hi, Jakob Bilinski. I am here representing our film Compression, which screens at 3 o'clock. It would be very cash money if you went to go see it. Yay, Jason the Dead.
Hi, right. I'm Nickolas. Toth. You may work out I'm not from around here. It's crazy. I've got a film here that I wrote and directed called The Red Diamond Cut. It's about female gangsters. Little crime movie set all in hair salon. If you want to come and check out some English female gangsters, come down on Sunday about 1 o'clock.
So now we will start our discussion. So everyone up here, I'm sure, loves not only films, but books, graphic novels, all of these things that interest us when we don't want to do other things and we want to read, we want to watch something. And with so much content out there, we're trying to find things to watch. You guys have a very, very important job in pulling us in. The question is, talk to us about how, and it can be a current project or any of your projects, about crafting and creating that world and those characters and how to bring people in.
So for Sheryl, like, how did we create the world? Is that the question?
Yeah, the world of Sheryl, because, the world of Sheryl, because you're creating the characters and you're writing to pull people in. How did you go about crafting that?
Sure, yeah, with Sheryl, it's a movie about a woman who cuts off people's faces and wears them, which is probably not a good thing to do, but we wanted to create a lot of empathy for Sheryl. So the world that we created is a terrible world where, like, everyone, in order to create this empathy for Sheryl, we wanted to show that everyone in this world is a bad person. And so every encounter she has, it's negative for her. So we took our world and then we kind of tweaked it in a certain direction. So it's almost the real world, but it's just heightened in a way where the worst side of everyone comes out. And then also, Sheryl is living in her own little serial killer world where for her, serial killing is just normal. So the way we built that world is to establish it from the beginning, where we just see these 2 couples of serial killers like going out and killing people as if it's a very normal thing. So in that way, we established very quickly the rules of the world, and then we worked really hard to maintain those rules throughout the whole thing so that it becomes a more believable world.
just going down the road?
We'll take a few and then we might rephrase and do another, but go right ahead and whoever wants to just pick up next and just answer it.
Yeah, in my Christmas epic script, the two characters are already well known. They're based on a couple of famous singers, Mariah Carey and Michael Bubbles. And their rivalry, their heated rivalry, and it plays out well. It was a story that I think everybody had stuck in their head at some point in time, but I wanted to write it because I thought there was more of a story behind that rivalry, and it could be a little bit delicious on the horror side. So for me, it was just trying to grow from the persona that we already know of those two big phenomenon, and try to build a fun horror story behind.
Yeah, I think, a lot of my supernatural horror novels are set in small town Indiana, and you've all, I'm sure, driven through a small town and said, what goes on here after dark? So it's easy to kind of put yourself in that world, and so it's the world we know, but a little off kilter, a little darker than hopefully what you encounter.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of how to answer this. Okay, so for compression, the movie is essentially about this woman that runs a podcast, and she takes a bunch of drugs, and all her PTSD comes home to roost, and it sort of turns into a psychological what is or is not in my home. It's like Mandy, but in your head in the house, kind of. And creating the story and the world for that was interesting on this project specifically because the world was just whatever she was experiencing in her head or what she was feeling, but trying to project that into visuals for the audience. So there's a lot of what's real, what's not, and in building that world, the best part, my favorite part was anytime anything didn't make sense logistically or we worried about continuity errors, it's she's tripping balls, it's fine, which was the greatest caveat ever. Building the world was fun because based off of that, I really didn't have a lot of rules. It was just if this is how things feel and not how they are, I was we could do anything. So that was sort of new for me because I tend to try to keep things really grounded in reality. It's a tangible killer. You can Scooby-Doo explain everything, but this one was just it can be esoteric and surrealistic and it doesn't matter. And that was fun because that was actually new for me, I guess, from a writing perspective. So there's that.
My idea of female gangsters, what I wanted with the world was it all to be juxtaposition. Because for me, for every gangster director's got their specific gangster look. If you were gonna take Tarantino, the black and white suits is synonymous, right? So I want my fucking shit, right, on the movie. And for me, the idea of female gangsters, I was I want them to stand the fuck out, right? So I wanted bright red hair. Right, bright red hair. I'm looking directly at you. In my head, I was I wanted him to have a kind of Yakuza style tattoo in the back of the neck. So that it's synonymous with you're in that gang. And the hair would be shorter the more higher up you were in the gang, right? So they have bright red hair. They would dress only in black. And my movie is about someone who's tried to get away from that life, and then the past coming back to reckon them. Because it's set in their location, it's set in the world of someone who's away from the mob. For me, it was about just changing colour. So the hair salon where this whole film is set, we painted the walls pink. I had a very, very specific idea of I want no red, no black inside this hair salon because it's got to feel like the blood in Jaws when these guys come in. And the location is just another way of telling the character. And for me, this was just all about someone who was trying to get away from the mob. So, the location had to be a symbol of that, with pink and the other little fun thing as well is the film's set on New Year's Eve in 1999. If you try and find Christmas shit that doesn't have red in it, it's really, really difficult. But we found it. Yeah.
You guys are trying to trick me to tell me how I knew how to write about a glory hole, and I don't appreciate that.
But you took the bait.
It's just, it's a cosmic story set inside a bathroom. So everybody's been in a bathroom. So we really wanted to keep that a relatable setting and location, so everybody can connect to it. Yeah, connected to the board. Yeah, connected to it. So it was trying to keep it grounded and keep it a story, a human story that everybody can relate to, where you're trying to run away from something, and then you end up running into something far worse.
There does need to be more tentacle graffiti.
Yeah, I agree. We already made it, it's already done. Yeah.
It's funny.
Release the whole cut.
So Bob, I want to talk to you about Anathema. Okay, I gotta keep saying it. So yours is like a three different screenplays, proof of concept, that type of thing. So I'm sure a lot went into developing this world. Can you talk to us a little bit about when you were deciding to do this type of production? I know you were with Dead Settlement being a horror western. How did you create this world, and did you know that you wanted it to go in that many parts and pieces? Because you're branching out, man.
Thank you. In general, I've always kind of went with the adage of write what you know. Write what you know. If you have a firm foundation on which to build your universe, then your story is not going to collapse under its own weight. I've always been a researcher. In the case of this, I have my late grandfather instilled in me a great love of the Old West, and I've been a Civil War living historian, so the time period was familiar to me. So that's how my creativity had worked for the longest time. When I began my master's program, I started the formal practice of transcendental meditation, and that has really helped open up my creativity. I figured if it's good enough for David Lynch, I mean, hey, we'll give it a shot. In the case of Anathema, I was midway writing my first feature, a supernatural western. And I was finishing a shift as a delivery driver. I'm out in the middle of BFE, Illinois, and the sky was all Halloween-like, and all of a sudden, two images popped into my head. One was a vampire brothel, and the other was a red-headed werewolf that wasn't afraid of fire. And I'm thinking, okay, where the hell did these fit into this current screenplay? And the muses just said, oh no, this is the next script. So normally I would have just tucked it away and not thought much about it, but the werewolf took a form when I saw of one of my oldest and dearest collaborators, Deacon Bowman. So I called them up and said, hey, this is kind of what happened. There was this red-haired wolf, looked like you, and wasn't afraid of fire, and the phone kind of goes dead, and then they go, well, I meant to tell you, we started learning how to do fire performance. So at that point, it told me I needed to get into and start writing the story. With the case of Anathema, it originally started as a half-hour pilot, but as I was developing that and the world around it, I realized there was a much bigger story to tell about this town and creatures that live in it, as well as the creatures that come and visit it. So I just started letting the story take me to the direction. I don't force the characters, they will talk to me. They will let me know what they're gonna look like, what they're gonna do, and I kind of maybe nudge them here and there, and then in time, yeah, it's developed into a 10-episode season, the pilot, and then 2 of the proof of concept shorts that I've got here. And Season 2 is lurking in the back, but I think I need to get Season 1 finished before carrying it further.
So that kind of segues into my next question, because I know if you're writing or working on multiple projects, how do you devote that time, and how do you separate the worlds that you are creating and those characters? Is there overflow? Is it best to work on one of your personal experience? I don't know if there's a best way, but it has to be a best way for each person, so if you are working on multiple things, how do you separate and balance? What's the take?
Deadlines. Contracts and deadlines, they tell you what to focus on. But
your own or from someone else?
Someone else. But writing is multi-task. Like, you have to juggle multiple projects, whether you're developing a feature screenplay or a book or multiple, seasons of a series. You're working on everything at the same time. And you have to, working on one will clear out the passage for another idea that'll help you get over the hump on things like that. So it's always important to be juggling multiple projects and not mixing them up. It's just not writing the same genre at the same time or the same kind of stuff.
My muse has ADHD, and so I'm always working on a project, and hear this whisper is like, oh, what would be cool is this. I'm like, well, that's great, but that doesn't fit into anything I'm doing right now. So can you wait a minute? But I have notebooks. I just fill notebooks with notes of this, that, and the other, and it all ends up going somewhere at some point.
Your whole question of if you're working on multiple projects at once, that didn't sit with me. I've got, I always have several. I've got a horror comedy going on right now. I've got a Civil War zombie thing. It's always multiple things, but I find at times it can be problematic, but at other times it's great because if one of my stories, the characters aren't quite, they're not getting along with me, or I'm not getting, what I need out of it, then I've got another one to fall back onto. And then sometimes when switching scripts, coming back to something after a while, when it's a little fresher, you get clearer eyes, clearer vision, and really, get more traction.
And I found too that sometimes if I'm working on a longer project, like a novel or something, then and I get an idea that doesn't really fit in anywhere, but it would be good for a short subject. Sometimes it's good to take a vacation from one world that you're in and do over a weekend, do like a short story or a short piece, and just get it out of your system, and then you can go back and devote yourself to a longer project you're working on.
For me, I struggle with, I'm kind of a slave to my emotions, so I need to have multiple things to work on because that's the only way I can curb writer's block or apathy. Like, I don't feel like working on this thing, but I might feel like working on this thing. So I usually have a few different scripts that I'm playing with, some more seriously than others, and I'm usually always editing something, so it's sort of like that round robin of write shit? Yeah, that we do that too. Write, shoot, edit, repeat. That came out weird. But, is that how glorious that is? No, but like I kind of have to balance that because otherwise I find myself just like not liking the thing I'm working on because like I want to take a break from it and come back to it with fresh eyes, but like I have that need to like I want to create, and if I'm not working on something I get really depressed. So it's like have multiple things. It's a blessing and a curse. There are pros and cons because then sometimes there's too many things and you just accelerate towards burnout quicker, but be aware, I don't know. But everybody's process is different. That's just what works for me.
I was gonna hit like a contrast to you guys, but I was actually kind of following on from what you said. Where you said like kind of about like it's very much dealing with your emotions. Yeah. And like this sounds like a twatty answer, but like
I'm a twat for it.
Twat power.
Twat, yeah.
But like yeah, so like I kind of like to just like write like one sentence of like how I feel basically about like this specific thing that I'm writing about. And you don't need to know specifically what the fuck I'm actually writing about, but I need to know, because it's my way of getting through it. Little revealing to all of you. Like this like little female gangster film is like inspired by my mum. So she was a hairdresser, I was like, single one growing up. So for me it was like just about dealing with my mum sort of just growing up and her changing from I thought as a kid like this really, really badass person that no one said no to. So she kind of moved. I'm from London. She moved like just outside London, and like I thought she got softer. And I was like, what would happen if she was a fucking gangster and that side's still in her and it's got to come out somehow. So yeah, that was my way of dealing with how I love my mummy.
I'm so happy. I'm so happy to hear people talking about writing muses. Because this whole time I thought I was talking to dead people, and like it could be maybe dead writers or something, but like that voice in your head that tells you this needs to get out on paper, make this happen. So it's nice to see other people have these things haunting them.
That's the best way.
Right?
It haunts you.
It does. It haunts you, and that's what it like truly feels the closest to me as like the kid in Sixth Sense. It's like I don't see dead people, I hear them, and they're telling me to write this shit. So literally sometimes like you just have to tuck yourself away and hammer it out and get it done so you can just let the voice die down a little bit and then you can move on to the other voices. But And it's nice to hear other people are dealing with the same thing.
Yeah, just to echo what everyone else said is, for me, I normally have one serious project that I'm working on, and I'll just write that. And then, every once in a while, during the process, or once that's done, it's nice to take a break and kind of get away from that and write something else, whether it's another serious thing or something that's just kind of a fun thing to take a break from the main focus. But I think, for me, there's always other creative things going on, whether it's writing music or writing a book or writing a screenplay or editing something. There's always some sort of creativity going.
We had a question out in the audience.
You guys kind of answered it all organically, which is amazing. But I guess just going further into your guys' thought process as far as navigating what your muse is telling you, what your wallet is telling you, what your peers and the people that you go to with these ideas. How do you navigate prioritizing one over the other? Is there one idea that you want to make, but you have it in your back pocket for the right opportunity or the right time? And what goes into that? Because it's just I don't know, I have a lot of ideas, but that's it.
Josh just said, I don't think you want the answer I'm going to ask. That's a good question. Thank you. Okay. I'm trying to think of how to approach this. I think it's kind of multifaceted. For compression specifically, that was kind of a unique and, they're all personal, but this one was uniquely personal. Literally, if you go see it, I'm not going to be able to talk to you because it feels just here's my diary, read it if you want. Made a very personal work with me. But that one, I guess if you're talking following and leading the muse, that was Emily. Really. My producing partner, her, she's in every frame of the movie. It was just how to show her and showcase that. And we developed the character a lot together. And yeah, that was, I can't really compare that to anything else because when you're thinking about the one, compression, when I was making it, I knew that flipped from, I keep saying this, there was a moment when I was thinking, maybe this is the next thing, because I hadn't made a feature in a minute. I was this is not a project, it's the project. And when it flips from being a thing to the thing, that's when I'm and that's instinct, I can't explain how you're just my gut says that. But literally, shitting it out, that's all we're doing. Welcome to the panel. For thinking forward, for instance, I'm working on 4 scripts right now, 2 more seriously, 2 are kind of back burner and maybe they'll get done over the next whatever, but I have 2 that I'm trying to get dirty drafts of by the end of the year. And one is sort of conceptualized at about the same budget, to bring in the wallet question, as compression. Okay, we could wash, rinse, repeat, and I could do this at the same scale. And I have one that's absolutely not. This is going to write it, and it's going to be for later because it's just figuring. I think there's a right time for every project, and I think that for me, this might be controversial, is regardless of budget. I think that there's a right time to tell a story and make a thing for you as a storyteller, not anyone else. And forcing that sucks, and it won't work. It never works. That's when projects fail. That's when this fell apart. That's when you see the better behind-the-scenes documentary than the movie you're watching. And so I think that it's you kind of just have to learn to listen to the muse. You've got all this esoteric bullshit that we say as hoity-toity artists because we want to tell stories. It's hard to answer. For me, it's sort of have something for, if you're waiting for, we're only going to make this if we have this element, X, whether that's dollars or time, or we're waiting for the right time, you're going to die before your movie gets made. You'll be waiting forever. Either do it or don't. Now, there's a right way and a wrong way, but I do think that comes down to more, is it the right time for you to tell that story? Because there's always a different way to tell the story. You can tell the same story in a backyard in Indiana or on Mars. It doesn't matter. Is it good writing? That's kind of I went on a TED Talk. Someone else talk. Anyway,
Sorry. He said that's a hard one to answer.
I got lost in the weeds. It was a good question. Someone else say some shit, please.
Yeah, for me, it's whichever muse is shouting loudest, whichever one won't be quiet, whichever one has that story to tell. And then playing off of your line about the dirty drafts, one thing I have found, never censor yourself on that first draft. Call it a dirty draft, call it a vomit draft, call it a BS draft. Get it out, because you can go through later. You're panning for gold. You got all this rock, all this dirt. You start sifting. You don't know what you've got. You don't want to just throw that tray out just because you don't see anything right to begin. You start sifting it. And when you start sifting it, the color starts showing, and then it becomes more visible. Get that first draft out. Put everything down. Do not censor yourself. I have found one thing that really helps with that is my first drafts, legal pads, in ink. Not changing anything, just start and get it down. Because first draft on a computer can be good, but I find myself constantly trying to edit it. So it's like the self-censorship. Get that first draft out, then let it sit, let it stagnate, let it rot, whatever. Let it sit there and then come back to it, and then you can go, oh, that's crap. And then, ooh, this is good. And then work from it from there. If you censor yourself right off the bat, you're sacrificing your stories and your characters.
There is nothing more intimidating than a blank page. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. And also, don't throw anything away. When you cut things, do not throw them away. Hang on to them. I had a short story sale for no other reason than the fact that they wanted something set on Halloween night, and I happened to cut the prologue from a novel that was set on Halloween night, and I said, with a tweak, this could be a self-contained story. I tweaked it, I sold it. So, just because it doesn't, what you're working on, and you cut it and it doesn't work for the project that you're on right at that moment, save it, because you never know when it could come in handy.
Exactly.
And for me, I'm not on any timelines or deadlines. I'm doing this part-time. I work full-time on the side. This is my fun stuff. So for me, it's just trying to get the voices out of the head and onto paper and move from there.
Did you want to answer?
I was going to add just a tiny little, maybe helping hand, I hope. And it's kind of following what you've said as well, with grab a fucking notepad and pen and don't go to the fucking computer. Also, sorry, I swear a lot. I don't know why. But fucking cool, I'm just gonna swear as well. When you're trying to pick your idea, right? So I write it all by hand. What I do is I'll record myself read the entire thing, right? The day after, and then the day after that, I'll just sit there, close my eyes, and just play it. And it's just like watching the movie, right? Now I focus on one fucking thing at a time, right? But if you've got multiple ideas, that might be a cool thing to try, because you can literally just watch 3 different movies that day, and you've wrote every single one of them. And which one do you want to watch more after you just watched it in your head? There's maybe your answer.
Well, and that's a really cool idea. And you bring up a good point. I always, when I get to dialogue, I always read it aloud, because you don't know how something's going to sound like in your head. You're like, oh, this is really cool. And then you read it aloud and you're stumbling over it and you can't get it out. You can't say it. It's like, no, yeah.
And then there's the worst version of that whenever you find that out on set when the actor said it.
Yeah. Oh, we have a question.
As storytellers, what world do you love to play? What world do you like to create? And or what are the characters that you love to bring to life?
I like strong female characters.
Yes.
So I love writing stories about women who kick ass, so so I go back to that, all the time. And probably my favorite playground was my urban fantasy series, just because it was a big sandbox that I just got to do all these things that I couldn't do in my more realistic tinge things. I could have all the the werewolves, the were-dragons, the shark people, I threw everything in there. But yes, there are certain places, worlds that you create that you feel comfortable in, like it's your second home, and so you do tend to gravitate towards those. But the character-wise, it's strong female characters. I'm really big on that. And the world-wise would be more fantastical places.
For me, I really love larger than life type of worlds. I want everything big. I want the characters to be big. I want them to talk big. And so I know we're at a horror convention, but my home is more like the fantasy world. And so we have, even in Sheryl, the movie we have here, I think she's a larger than life character. Everything is very over the top intentionally, where we kind of try to push it up as close to the line of campiness as we can without going over to I want the costumes to be big and outlandish. I want the settings, I want the dialogue to all be kind of our world, but just like up to 11, and just everything to be as big as possible. That's where I like to live personally.
Sometimes a lot of writing is like therapy. You can right wrongs, you can process trauma.
So therapists could make a lot of money off this panel.
Absolutely. I think it was like Stephen King had once said that, have you ever been, they asked why he writes what he does, and like, well, have you ever been in traffic and you're sitting there and some guy cuts you off and you just want to kill them? And so a lot of it can be that, the what ifs. In most of my writing, it's outcasts, pariahs, people that are trying to find their way in this world despite not fitting into the norms of, civilized society.
For me, it's it's characters, like I'm writing for me, really. And I think, right? I think, sorry, I apologize. I was reading the script. No, and it's stuff that I want to see or that I would want to see up on the screen. And I mean, that's where I start. So I've got like a horror feature that started this whole writing for me. And there's a scene in it where a guy kills a whole baseball park full of kids. And it sounds so horrible, but I made it work in horror theme. And I wanted to write that because I was like, nobody writes that. And my buddy that read it, he was like, nobody's gonna make this, man. Like, you're killing kids. And I was like, no, I'm not killing kids, right? Let's do this. But I did it in such a way that it doesn't work that way. And you don't realize they're kids until the end, but not to give away. But long story, but that was just internally. I wanted to see that. That was my story. And I was like, as cryptic as that is, right? But like, no, like you don't follow Instagram pages where kids get hurt. That's awesome.
That's my favorite.
They are the best. Like they just fall off cars and stuff in the park. And it's hilarious.
There's a good subreddit I'll send it to you.
Thank you. Anyways, I did it creatively, so I got it out of my system. It was fun and moved on. That was the first script.
So that was actually going to be somewhat my next question is, I feel like a lot of times with movies and with writing and stories you read, I feel like there's always this pressure to stay on trend or what's new, what's popular this year, what's foreseen, what's popular for next year. Who are you writing for and who are you making these worlds for? You answered, for you, but does everyone feel that way? Are they writing definitely what they want to see? What are you wanting to see? Well,
you can't write to trends. Because you can try.
Say it.
You can try.
By the time it's done, the trend is moved on.
Yeah, because I mean, because by the time...
That being said, killing kids is really going to be in next year.
I'm really hoping so.
We're going out of season.
Yeah. But I mean, by the time, because what's popular now, by the time that you write the screenplay, you get the backing for it, you do all the pre-production, the production, everything, edit it, put it all together, put it out there, that trend is gone. It's something else.
So Josh, tell us why you wrote a bit of Glory Hole.
Was that trending?
Those are
Yeah. It goes in and out.
So like I said, you want to write what you'd like to see. In addition to that, sometimes I'll write for specific people or specific ideas. The current short horror screenplay comedy I'm writing called Escalation is dealing with a failing mall, which is basically me dealing with decades of retail and mall hell trauma. But in that, it had the base idea, but years ago I met Lloyd Kaufman during his book tour for all I needed to know about filmmaking. I had learned from The Toxic Avenger, and I had told him about a project I was working on at that time, and he said, you need to give me a part. Well, at that point, that project, a part wasn't mine to give. So as I'm writing Escalation, I'm thinking, okay, who would be running this town where this kind of a shithole mall would be? And I'm just, all of a sudden, Uncle Lloyd just walks right in the frame. There he is, the mayor of Greenville. And so I've written this part for him, and I'm going to send it to him and say, hey, Lloyd, I finally came through with you for that part. Can you be the mayor for me?
Okay, so who are we writing for? Weirdly enough, this kind of goes with the previous question. So right now, okay, so compression, because I feel like I'm so manic depressive when it comes to like what I'm into, and it usually is like whatever movie I just watched that I was really hyped on. Like I want to go do that. So it's like one day I want to do John Wick, the next day I want to do Texas Chainsaw. It's just a movie. No, like for my birthday's coming up, and I just want to watch. I want to go back and forth. I say I'm going to do a Bergman and Bay day. We're going to watch an Ingmar Bergman movie, a Michael Bay movie, and go back and forth for total whiplash because that's how I am as a person. Anyway, so like what I'm into is always changing, and when you're thinking of trends, everyone's into different shit. But what I'm into right now, which is what I guess was with intention with compression, and I hate doing this because it's like this meets this, but for sake of what people are into, just to cut corners, right now, what I'm into, which I try to do with compression, is I want things to feel askew like a David Lynch movie. I want them to look like a Refn or an Argento movie, and I want the stories to deal with like emotional, complex relationships and PTSD in the way a Mike Flanagan script goes. So like, I'm like, can I put all my favorite storytellers together and somehow not feel emulative? Because, you know, imitation is the highest form of flattery. There's no new fucking ideas. I literally watched a movie, A Days of the Dead, that I never heard of last night that has like 10 similarities. We're like, that's kind of our script, because we're all doing different things and processing life the way that we see it. So like, that's what I'm into now. I'd like to think, hopefully, if you see compression and you know some of the references I did, you'd be like, oh, that tracks, because we tried. But it was more of a, in this vein, not really to make an audience who likes this. It's just that I'm into this and I want to see how I can derive influence from it and try to tell a story the way that I tell it. Because, you know, going back to the whole there's no new storytelling ideas, okay, cool, there are no new stories. Everything is derivative of what are, I don't know, the original, however many archetypes are. But cool, everyone's heard Peter Pan.
But the best part, Jacob, is we got to hear your version.
Yeah, I heard Peter Pan the way
That's
that
awesome.
you read it to me when I was
That's
growing up,
awesome.
not your mom, not the way that you do to your kids, not someone else. You can always tell a story a different fucking way because everyone has a different voice. That's just my thought.
We've got an audience question.
So going off that idea of like no new stories, when you're writing, how do you feel like if you're writing into a trope or you comparing to like an idea, you're like, oh, I have this great idea, but it's kind of like this. How do you like get over that hump in your mind and make the idea your own and put your own touches on it?
Good question.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with characters, really. I mean, your characters are your characters, and so you can. I think the worst thing is watching a movie or reading a book or whatnot that is just a tired old trope. You know, but if you can take that trope and put a fresh spin on it, like, why would you go into the old spooky house? Nobody would go into the old spooky house. I mean, I've seen movies where people would, you know, point that out and say, you know, this is exactly what people in a horror movie do, and we shouldn't do it. You can go, yeah, you can go that route, or you know, just, but I try to make all the situations derive from my characters and what they're going through at the moment. And so just because they're going through something that another character in another movie or another book or story or whatnot may have gone through, they're going to go through it differently because they're different people. So, you know, you can do a trope, but you can make it your own because your characters are your own and they're different people and they're going to handle it differently than other people would.
I love that. I'm also going to take a controversial take and say cliches are cliches for a reason. They work. Figure out a way to work with them.
Did you see The Stranger's chapter?
No, and I don't. I don't want to. I'm sorry. Pray at Night was a great sequel. Why are we going back?
Yes.
Shut up.
Yes.
Anyway, yeah, no.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that movie's underrated anyway. But no, like I think it's 100%. I want to fully back what you said about character because it's like, okay, we've seen this story, but we haven't seen these characters in this situation, and that's what makes when you're like, oh, this is like this movie. Dude, Nope is Jaws in the sky.
Yep.
That's all. I mean, it's more than that. But when you break it down, I'm like, this is fucking brilliant because he's like, what if Jaws was in the air? And I'm like, yes. Yeah. So I mean, but that feels like a fresh, original movie because it's first off, it's really good. Come on. Yeah. But yeah. So like, I don't think there's one right way. It's follow your intentions if your intentions are true. Like, you know, I think It is a little follow your gut. It's a thing that's hard to describe. Or am I crazy?
No, you're absolutely right. Well, and Jordan Peele did the greatest bait and switch like ever, because they marketed that movie as Jordan Peele does in Close Encounters, and it was
Yes.
Jordan Peele does Jaws.
I know, and I was sitting there like, please, yes.
And like everybody on this panel, like I've read so many goddamn books and I've watched so many goddamn movies. And sometimes when you're writing, you're like, fuck, this is good. And then you're like, did I see that somewhere? Did I read that somewhere? Like, am I ripping this off?
that a recurring
Right?
nightmare
And
for
it's like,
anyone?
just because you've seen so much that it's like you said, like things have all been done. So you're just trying to put your spin on it. And sometimes it lands really well, and sometimes you're like, not so much.
You can rewrite it. Like if you're like, you can like literally write a fucking cliche. If you like the cliche, just carry on with the cliche.
Yeah.
If you're like, I don't like the cliche, just pick up a pen and rewrite it.
What's this rule shit?
Yeah.
So, as, that's this rule shit, I like that. But you're right, the rule is there are no rules. So when you're bringing that into consideration when you're working with your projects, and you are wanting to make something that hasn't been seen, but then are you second guessing that? Has it been seen? What can I do different? And I understand that you're making the characters your own, but I think when everyone's, wants to write or they're wanting to do these things, there's that, I think, automatic like clinch, like, oh my gosh, is it going to be so similar or too similar, or people are going to say I'm a fake, I'm a copy, all of these things. Does any of that kind of go on when you're writing and you're trying to differentiate it so much that you're losing focus?
What I find works best is if you just put a glory hole in something. It's really going to be original.
He's not wrong.
I love glory holes.
For me, the sweet spot is to find like that thing when people are like, oh man, I know this, I've seen this, but I don't know where. Like I know, and that for me comes from, I think we've all read enough, seen enough stuff that we're going to start with a trope, whether, in Sheryl, like basically she's a slasher, right? She's going around, she's killing people. But what can we do with that, to make it different, make it new? And so I think there's always that feeling of like, man, we've seen this before, but just kind of echo what everyone else said. It's like we haven't seen your version, and so it's like, I think for me there is a time where I sit down and I think like, well, what would be cool? What would be cool here? And it's like, what would be the who would be the worst person to be in this situation? Let's put them in that situation. So who's the worst person to put in a world where everybody's constantly criticizing you? Okay, it's a person who's constantly looking for external validation. And so how is she going to react to that? And so she reacts to that in a way where she's a slasher. She's going to go around killing people. So I do think there's always that start of the trope, of like something and oh man, this has been done, but you have to just kind of keep exploring that idea and seeing what pops up for you in order to get to something new and fresh.
And working off of that, the question I always ask myself is what if? That's the greatest way to start off something. So what if you've got the trope? Okay, what if Jaws was in the air? What if Pocahontas was set in deep space?
What if Michael Bublé wanted to kill Mariah Carey? That's what my screenplay's about.
With the what if, you're allowing the story to grow. You're allowing your imagination to take that trope into whatever direction you're going, and more often than not, you're going to have something fresh. You're like, well, what if, you take the left path instead of the right path, red pill, blue pill.
Yeah, I got in an argument with an editor one time because I was having a host warn somebody about something, and she's like, this is, they did that in Pet Cemetery. I said, have you read Shakespeare? I said, they've been doing that for a long time.
To be fair, I I'm a silly Brit.
Sorry, I'm Canadian, this hits home.
I'm not even going to say it now. No, I like to indulge in genre. So I like to just binge the shit out of a genre or binge the shit out of a director, right? And then when you do that, then start looking for true stories, right? So my first film was a World War II film, and I found out there were secret Jewish Nazis, and I was like, I should make a World War II film that indulges in the same way that, well, like two films do it with this thing. That how the hell is this not become a movie? The same with like gangster movies. I fucking love gangster movies, and I was like, why the hell has there not been properly been a female gangster movie? And the closest I came was like one from like 1937 called Mark Women with Betty Davis, but that was the closest. It still wasn't exactly like it needed to be. And my idea was like gangsters speaking in subtext, the coolest shit about gangsters, and like women are better at speaking in subtext than guys. Like we just get straight to the point.
There's better in general.
Yeah, right. But look for the whole. Look for like what was the thing that I like about this genre, and what's the thing what's not missing, but like what's the thing that I can put in that genre. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, we're gonna have to be wrapping up, but I just want to ask one quick question, and you got like 15 seconds to answer it. What is the most absurd thing that you want to put into the next body of work that you do? I know you guys gotta have something locked and loaded. If you don't, I'm gonna be so disappointed.
Spoilers.
No, seriously.
I'm working, this is gonna sound really weird because I'm Canadian. I'm a big Cleveland Guardians fan, or Cleveland Indians, depending on how you look at it. And they didn't win a World Series in 2016, and I just wrote a script where they did win the World Series, because I wanted to see that. Anyways, it's a fun one though.
Anyone else?
I'm going to do a Western next, and I want to see a thief/cowboy just lose their masculinity and have a mental breakdown while they're in a job and lose their mind. And I want it to be a Mexican, and I want this dude over here to play. So stand up, Mr. Johnny Rodriguez. You're going to play Mr. Tuco in my next Western.
Mr. Tuco.
I don't want to get into it yet, but I'm going to do a body horror movie. Yeah. I'll say that.
You know, just
More holes.
not right about a hole, I guess. More hole. Branch out a little bit.
Michael, you got anything?
I'm finally gonna do a haunted doll.
Yes.
Is it gonna be?
No, I'm a sucker for haunted dolls. Shit.
Is it gonna be Indiana based or
It
just a haunted
is,
doll?
it's the, you know, I keep saying it's my final Harmony Indiana book, but my publisher says no, it's not.
Yeah, don't make them do a misery on you. Yes, it's not the final. We don't want.
But yeah, I've always wanted to do, you know, ever since I saw Talkie Tina, you know, back in the day, and I've always wanted to do a haunted doll, so I'm picking a haunted doll.
Anybody else down here?
Talking about tropes, I'm working on a vampire thing where it's a gang of badass women vampires who fight against a single mom and her kids, and it ends in this big fight in the house, and the house explodes. So that's where it is now. We'll see where it is.
I like it. Okay, thank you all for being here, and we love having a mix of film screenwriters and novelists and graphic novels and all of this stuff that comes our way, and series. I'm really excited to see that you know, have this whole world created. I'm invested because I want to know what happens, and I happen to love Westerns. I love Westerns.
Let James Mangold know. I want to listen to the show.
That's my jam. I, you know, grew up with Westerns. You know, my mom can't stand them, and me and my dad harass her daily with the Grit Channel and MeTV and stuff like that, so it's awesome. Anything horror related that is a Western, I'm down for it. Give you guys yourself a round of applause. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much.
I know.